Hello and welcome to Chapter 7. Today we're going to talk about organization, teamwork, and communication. And this chapter talks about how organizations are structured, such as who does what in the organization and what function everyone serves. Organizations could not be very effective or efficient if they didn't have some kind of structure. Okay, culture is part of an organization structure. It's kind of the underlying attitude of the organization. So it's a set of key values, beliefs, and attitudes shared by organizational members, and this is what drives employees' behavior. Okay, so it's important when you work somewhere that you understand the culture, because if you go against the culture, someone's going to let you know that, either directly or indirectly. And it's important because it guides employees' behavior, and employees' behavior has a direct impact on the success of the company. So the culture consists of rites and rituals and various other things, but it's important because it's a powerful influence on how employees think and act. It also determines public perception. When you walk into a place, you get a feeling for the culture by the things you see and kind of the vibe you get from the employees and their attitude and that sort of thing. So it does have a strong influence. So how do cultures start? And once they do start, they become very ingrained. It's very difficult to change culture once it's there. Most cultures start from the company founder, whoever starts the company, okay, the entrepreneur, such as Sam Walton, pictured here. When he started Walmart, he started that on a culture of low cost. When he traveled, he would, with other executives, he would stay at, low cost motels. So that culture permeated that organization even after he's been gone. And you could say the same for Apple with Steve Jobs. How he created that culture of innovation and creativity and hard work and drive and that sort of thing still continues on. One way that is carried forward is through stories. People in the company will tell new people different stories of things that happened um, in the history of the company and how things came about. They'll talk about organizational heroes, different leaders that reacted to crisis situations in a way that um, contributed to the culture of the organization. Can also be formal statements, like the mission statement, policies, procedures, things like that. Could be slogans and sayings, and that sort of thing. Okay, so some ways you can tell culture. You can tell culture by the physical setting, by the artifacts you see when you walk in. What kind of furniture is there? What kind of paintings are on the walls? So you certainly could think of the difference between walking in the community bank versus walking in Google. Okay, very different because of physical setting. Okay, we have corporate statements, press releases, how the company treats people, how employees spend their time, employee behavior. All that indicates culture. So besides culture, we look at how the organization's structured. Okay, so we're going to look at characteristics like structure and job specialization, how jobs are grouped, authority, centralization, chain of command. So structure is the vertical and horizontal configuration of departments, authorities, and jobs in a company. And this shows an organization chart, which is just a series of boxes and lines showing formal lines of authority and the organization's official formal positions. So you can look briefly at an org chart and you can tell, who reports to who and who has authority over who and kind of what they do. Okay. Another characteristic of organizations, and this kind of came from the Industrial Revolution and things progressed at that point to where tasks were being divided based on specialization. And what that means is a job is broken into the smallest parts it could be done. And this is economical to an organization because the job becomes very simple. You can teach people easily. Consider McDonald's. They're a great example of specialization. Each person does a particular task. Even the drink machines there require really no skill or work. They just put them there and press a button. Okay, so the problem with it, though, is it does lead to being bored, if you're doing the same little job over and over and over. So it does lead to low satisfaction. People aren't happy, they'll leave, there's high turnover. But the company doesn't really much care about that because they care about the jobs being economical and they can bring in somebody for minimum wage to replace them. Okay. Departmentalization is how organizations group jobs into units, and it can be by one of these four methods. Okay, by function, by product, by location, by customer. So by function, we mean the function performed by that department. So for instance, we have in this example, finance, that's all the people that deal with the finance for the organization, marketing, and then operations. And you'd probably, if this were expanded, you'd also see, human resources, research and development, so on and so forth. So this type of functional departmentalization is smaller and newer companies do this. They organize by function. The advantages, as it says, it's simplified, the supervision and coordination. Work is done by highly trained specialists. But some problems, it does create slow decision making, and it emphasizes departments. People get very loyal to their departments and may not see, the goals of the company as a whole. And this is something that I would term creating silos. By silos, I mean every department kind of stands by itself, and it makes coordination difficult with other departments and slows up decision making. Okay, and product departmentalization, all the products the company makes are different departments. Okay, like in this example. So decision making becomes easier and faster because things are integrated, but it duplicates activities. In other words, in the printer division, you would need, accountants, you would need HR people, you would need, finance people or whatever, and you would also need those people in the other divisions. So it's a duplication of resources. Okay, and geographical, the company is divided based upon the geographical region they're operating in. So this works well because they can respond to unique demands of the customer, okay, and of different market areas. But it can be very large and out of control. And here again, a duplication of resources, the same as with the products. Okay, and it's difficult to coordinate between divisions. Customer departmentalization is kind of like product, except this considers who the end user is, or the customer. So this is more focused on customers and can deal with unique customer situations. But here again, there's an administrative burden. We have a duplication of resources, just like in the previous two. And a focus on customers may hurt the overall company if everybody just wants to please the customer, but really doesn't view if that's helping or hurting the vision and mission of the company as a whole. Okay, in organizations, authority has to be delegated. I mean, there's so much work to do in so little time. Managers have to delegate to their subordinates, and that just means the assignment of direct authority and responsibility to complete tasks that the manager is normally responsible. And this requires that 3 transfers occur. The manager gives the subordinate responsibility for the task. The manager also has to give the subordinate the authority. The subordinate doesn't have the authority and the resources needed, they won't be able to complete the task. Then the subordinate gives the manager accountability. They say, yes, I'm going to be responsible for completing this task. I'm going to be held accountable. Um, Organizations are centralized or decentralized or somewhere in the middle. And what this means is in a centralized organization, the decision making and authority are at the top levels, at the highest levels. People down at lower levels aren't empowered to make decisions. In a decentralized organization, the decision making power is pushed down to the lowest possible level in the organization. For instance, we went to Office Depot and there was a mistake in what the cashier rung up. And so we figured, oh, great, we're going to be here forever. Well, she goes and gets a manager, and the manager has to come and make the decision to correct it. But the cashier, right there on the spot, was able to correct it and make an adjustment. So this was decentralized. She was empowered to say, yeah, there's a problem here, and I can figure out how to fix it, and I can fix it. Okay, so you get generally better customer service in a decentralized organization, if you think about it. Then we look at the span of management. How many workers report directly to one manager? In a wide span, there's a large number of subordinates reporting to one manager. And a narrow span is the opposite. You have a few subordinates to one manager. So a narrow span creates like a tall, thin organization. A wide span creates sort of a flat, sort of wide organization. The recent emphasis or trend nowadays is that the organization needs to become leaner, and they're going with more of a wide span, kind of cutting out that middle layer. And therefore, it works well in a decentralized organization because it gives greater autonomy and decision making to subordinates. Okay, and nowadays with technology allowing managers to communicate and monitor employee performance, um, up to 30 subordinates could report to one manager, okay, because they can use, technology to help manage that situation. Okay, chain of command in organizations, that's the ability to be able to tell somebody what to do, okay? And a line structure is very clear. If you have line authority over somebody, you can tell them what to do, okay, and they report to you. In a line and staff structure, what that means is you have direct authority over people with line, a line between, and these are people that supervise other people certainly. Then staff structure, staff means these are positions that advise line managers. In other words, things like human resources is a staff function. When I was an HR manager, I was in a staff position. I could not tell someone what to do outside of my department. I would advise them and I could say, here's what I, suggest you do, but I couldn't force them to do that or order them to do that. I could do that with my own subordinates in my own department, but I couldn't go to production and tell them what to do. Okay, and also line positions are things dealing with the main product. They're production, marketing, logistics, things like that, versus staff are advisory, things like legal, human resources, and those sorts of things. In a matrix structure, it's like a hybrid of things. A matrix structure combines functional and divisional chains of command so that there are two command structures, vertical and horizontal. What this means is you could organize by function. So you have accounting, marketing, research and development, HR, according to function. Then you also have product line. So I could be the HR manager in the computer product line. Then there's an HR manager in the printer product line. And this kind of structure allows them to pull employees into teams. And it works very well in complex organizations that do a lot of research and development and things like that. Groups and teams are used in organization structures. Okay, and these are the definitions of groups and teams. Communication is very important in the organization. We have formal communication and informal communication. Formal communication is kind of in the, can go up or down the organization or diagonally. This is just a little diagram of how communication happens. And you can see why communication can be not successful, okay? And the noise in the middle represents that. Things can happen, like the wrong channel could be used, could be in the environment, something happening, could be that the message had jargon in it or things that the receiver can't understand, like a language barrier. Then we have informal communication, which is really interesting in organizations. You've all heard of the grapevine, and this is where messages get transmitted not within that formal chain of command, that you see in an org chart. It happens kind of between people, okay? And managers have to really pay attention to this. It's an important source of what's going on, and it's usually pretty accurate. It's done in person, so it's timely. It can be verified. And sometimes managers use this to their advantage. They test something through that or see if, something is really true. In most organizations, if you want to know anything, you go to the secretary. That's the person who's involved, and they know what's going on everywhere, okay? It takes a couple different forms. Could be the gossip chain, one person telling a bunch of people, or the cluster chain is one person telling somebody and they tell a couple people and they tell a couple people until everybody knows what's going on. Those are the high points for Chapter 7. I hope you enjoyed some of the topics here, and I think they're very important to successful managers. Thank you.